Good evening, colleagues, lecturers, and viewers. Welcome to our blog. I am Tracy Campbell, and this is my partner, Tianna Samuels. This evening, we will be chatting with you on information that was gathered from our case study on developmental pathways. My partner and I chose two pathways, cognitive and social interaction. According to Rolf Luber and Jeffrey DeBerg, the development pathway, this is defined as the ordinary behavioral development between more than two problems behaviors, with individuals different in their propensity to progress along the successful problem behavior represented by the pathway during development. To carry out this case study, a 40-year-old grade 9 student was chosen, and these were our findings. What is the cognitive pathway? The cognitive pathway refers to how information is processed, assimilated, and used in a sophisticated manner. Cognitive development means how children think, explore, and figure out things. This is where knowledge, skills, problem solving, and dispositions are developed, which play an integral role in children's life in helping them to understand how the world around them operates. To gain a better insight as to how our case is supposed to operate under the cognitive stage, the Piaget theory was used as a guidance. Piaget developed this theory because he was intrigued as to why children give wrong answers and not think logically. From Piaget's stages of cognitive development, which are the sensomotor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational stage. Well, since we would have used a 40-year-old male student, it is said from Piaget development stages that this child should be operating under the formal operational stage. And in the formal operational stage, this child should be able to be thinking logically. He should be able to he should be able to solve problems. He should have the skills and knowledge that is required at that age. Alright? So from the questionnaire that was used, I would have chosen some questions to bring out the different types of skills that this child is supposed to have at this age. Bear in mind that this child can have, or this child can be operating at the formal operation stage, or he can still be developing into that, or should I say transitioning into the formal operational stage. Because as we know, not all children are at the level that is supposed to be. Some are high flyers, while some are low flyers, but with help and guidance, all of them, or all our children, can reach that stage that is supposed to be at. Just that everybody moves or operates differently, right? So the Piaget theory, which we're speaking about the formal operating stage, after I would have questioned the child using a questionnaire to find out where this child was. After my question, I found out that the child was not effectively operating at the formal operating stage because of the answers that was given during the interview. For example, many mathematical problems that were asked of the child, he wasn't able to calculate the answer in his head. And that is one of the characteristics that a child must have at a formal operational stage. Most times when you ask the child a question, he had to write the answer down on paper. And even though he would have written the answer down on the paper, the answer was still wrong. Hypothetically, what if questions were asked? What if you borrowed your sister's bicycle and the wheel got punctured while you borrowed it? What if you borrowed your sister's bicycle without her permission and the wheel got damaged? What would you do? The child responded like, first of all, he would not tell his sister that he borrowed the bicycle. And if the wheel got punctured, he would say that it wasn't him. So right away we see that the child was being childish and being dishonest. He was not being able to take responsibility for his action. Also, there was a experiment that was carried out, and from that experiment certain questions were asked, and the child could not formulate a hypothesis for that experiment also. Other questions were asked about problem solving, which in some of the answers were correct that was given and some was wrong. Some mathematical calculations were given even though the answer was right. The way that he gave the answer was not in the range that the answer was given. Right? So from that experiment, it was evident that the child was not operating in the formal operational state. From my experience, or should I say from my knowledge that I would have learned on the stages of the cognitive development, I can say that the child is in its concrete operational stage. There is no transitioning into the formal operational state. These are activities that teachers can do so that the child can get up to speed, right? And these are putting that child in large groups, a lot of group assignments, which would help him to think ahead, which will help him to give feedback, which will help him to have conversation with his peers, and that can also help him in his thinking. Also, the child should have a lot of board games, for example, chess, because chess is a game that you have to know your next move. You also have to know, based on what your opponent might do, what will be your next move. So it helps you to think ahead, it helps you to think constructively, and it helps you to plan for the future, because you have to know what is your next move. So that will entail you that in the future, this is what I need to do. Right? So those are activities. Put the child in large groups. Ensure you allow the child to have freedom of speech, let the child express himself, and board games. Right? These are things that will help the child to gradually transition fully into the form operational stage. Not allowing them to do these things on their own, but with your guidance. I will now hand you over to Miss Tianna Samuels, who will speak about the social interaction skills. And before I go, the social interaction skills and the cognitive pathway goes hand in hand, right? And from the interview, we saw that the social interaction skill has a lot to do with how the child develops, because if the child is not socially interacting with its peers and persons around him, it can slow down its transitional period into the formal operational stage, because he's not talking to anybody, he's not socializing, he's more withdrawal, and these things can also hamper a child in developing into the stage that they're supposed to be.
Hi there, good evening. Tianna Samuels here, presenting on social interaction pathway. The social interaction pathway, according to James Comer, refers to the individual's ability to develop and maintain healthy relationships and to adequately negotiate challenging relationships. The goal of this pathway is to help children and adolescents to increase their capacity to build and maintain healthy relationships across the range of human diversity. These interactions include physical movement, body language, and conversations, playing, sharing, and more. A child must be able to interact with others. This aids in him building relationships with his family, friends, his peers, and this is most important on many levels. When a child is able to interact socially with those around him or her, it builds that child mentally. That child will appear to be happier, and it also promotes a sense of safety, belonging, and security. It also allows you to confide, or allows the child to confide in you or in others, or even others confiding in that child. Having positive social interaction skills also helps your cognitive skills, because as a child your social skills helps you to be a rounded individual or a rounded person. It helps to think and better communicate, better analyze situations, and help to deal with conflict, and how to also solve problems when these problems may arise. When doing this case study on the social interaction pathway, it was observed that the student was not socially interactive. The response which he gave to questions asked shows clear indications that he is very self-centered, prefers to be at home, and most of the times he prefers to be alone, no company. Not having friends does not really bother him. He cannot remember, or he cannot even recall a time when he had fun or when something good has happened in his life. For a grade 9 student, especially a boy, school is fun. School is supposed to be fun for them, and they anticipate going to school to pick trouble, talk with their friends, play basketball, football, cricket, and other sports and so on. But in this case, when asked what was the best part of school, this child, he responded and said the best time for him was when it's time to go home. While interviewing this child also, it was seen constantly that the child, that he was not making eye contact. He was very shy, and most of his answers to questions were no. He answered them as no, or he refused to answer any questions in a sentence form. When asked why, he said yes or no to any questions asked, he would say, I don't know. And this was a pattern throughout the interview. So it was evident that this student has a very poor social interactive lifestyle, and as such, it is affecting him in many other ways. Children who are socially underdeveloped should be encouraged in various ways for them to become more interactive with others around them. Some ways in which they could develop socially are: the teacher could encourage or should encourage them to join after school programs or after school clubs or even school organizations. The teacher could also implement the students to form a body system where they will be encouraged to have a classmate as a friend who will help them or whom they will help, especially if one misses a day at school. The other one could inform or could keep them updated with what they have missed at school or what work they would have missed, and so on. Teachers could also have relationship building activities such which will establish trust and respect, such as having each student share their weekend experiences and even play icebreaker games like That's Me. Also, what could be implemented is the teachers could have the students seating arrangement in a circle form or even in groups where the students will be forced to interact with each other because they are sitting closely together. And if the student still does not want to socialize by talking, then the teacher should encourage them to write letters to a pen pal or have a diary where they could write their thoughts in and have a confident read it, which could in turn help them with whatever way necessary.
Vygotsky theorized that children's cognitive development is explicitly related to language and social interaction. And through social interaction, children learn how to use language and experience the world as a member of their specific culture. Vygotsky went on to say that speech begins as a means of communication and socializing and later becomes a tool for thinking. At this point, speech and thought becomes interdependent. When this happens, children's monologues internalize to become inner speech. The internalization of language is important as it drives cognitive development. He also believes that children use language to plan, guide, and monitor behavior. From the explanation, it can be seen that the two pathways are dependent on each other. But from the case study that was carried out, we can safely say that the two pathways were overlapping in a negative way, where the development of the child is concerned. It was evident that the child's social skills were not garnered, and it affected him also in his cognitive development stage, where he was not thinking, analyzing, and solving problems. He was unable to perform those skills. During our study with the student, it also shows that his self-confidence was very low and he did not believe so much in himself and felt like his presence was not needed by those around him.